Yes, you read the video title right. The pay-per-view is dead. The UFC have just signed a deal with Paramount Plus to now host all of their events. Paramount Plus will pay the UFC $7.7 billion over the next 7 years. And over those next 7 years, we're guaranteed 30 fight nights and 13 numbered cards. That being said, there is still a clause in there that allows for the UFC to run pay-per-views. But before I get ahead of myself, let's talk about what all this means. The UFC is about to explode in popularity because advertisers are going to want to advertise a whole lot more with the UFC because there's going to be a lot more people watching legally now. Not too many people really wanted to watch all that shit on pay-per-view because pay-per-view is, what, $80 a card? And the quality of the cards aren't the best. But now, for a simple subscription to Paramount Plus, you're going to be able to watch all the cards. So I feel that's going to really boost ratings, boost numbers, and create a bunch of new fans. Because live sports on streaming services is next up, and the UFC is really one of the first major ones to get into it. Now, this does come out of left field. I fully expected this to be the Netflix deal, because TKO, which is the parent company for the UFC, that also owns the WWE, put Monday Night Raw on Netflix. So I fully expect the same thing to be for the UFC. Unfortunately, that is not the case. But with Paramount Plus being the new host of the UFC, I think this is going to be overall good, as long as the fighters see extra money. The old ESPN deal was for a fraction of what they're getting paid, and if the rates for fighters stay the same, but the company gets a bunch more money, I'll be really disappointed. I think guys who are on the come up deserve more than just 12 to show, 12 to win. Maybe with this new deal we can get it up to 35 to show, 35 to win. That would completely and totally change over the way the sport is and the level at which fighters are able to compete at. A lot of these fighters are one real good check away from changing their entire lives around. How many times have we seen guys who are actively working jobs while in the UFC? Most people wouldn't have to actively work a job while being in the UFC if they made what the average family pulls in just to weigh in. But back to the Paramount deal and what this means for the sport. I don't think this is going to be a bad thing. I think moving away from the pay-per-view model is very, very smart. I think the pay-per-view model is dying, and this also pulls more people away from illegal streaming services. The main reason a lot of the streaming services the main reason a lot of the illegal streaming services have such high traffic is just because there's no real affordable way for the average fan to watch pay-per-views. And because that, they're making it a lot more accessible. A lot of people now no longer feel the need to pirate these cards. And I'd rather have a Paramount Plus subscription than a ESPN Plus subscription. So I have no problem with this. This is actually a really, really good change. This is really, really a very, very consumer-friendly thing. And I think it's going to boost the ratings the UFC has, at least in America. Because I know a lot of people who'd rather just pirate it because it's so much of a hassle trying to set everything up for a fight. No one's trying to spend $80 to watch a fight night, to watch a pay-per-view of with all their favorite fighters, especially with the quality of the pay-per-views that have been put on recently. But that's all for right there. The really, really, really good thing that I like about this this Paramount Plus deal is Paramount Plus is so inexpensive that the UFC is going to profit so much from this. Because people were like, I don't want to spend $80 a month for that. Versus now I'm spending like $20 a month and I get access to all the pay-per-views and the fight nights. The UFC is going to see so much more money. This is such a good deal. But to talk about another thing is that the UFC will be allowed to have their own pay-per-views still. Even though that they're going to be on the Paramount Plus. So I think they're going to reserve the really, really big fights for their own pay-per-views. And that makes a whole lot of sense. Give us Topuria Makachev. I can't wait. This is such a good change. And I don't understand the people who are saying it's not. But that's just the news for right now. The UFC putting on its own pay-per-views can give us extra events. All this deal does is it guarantees us 43 events a year. If the UFC does a couple one-off pay-per-views on top of that, we get a couple extra events throughout the year. There's 52 weeks in a year. There's going to be 4 weeks between the last 2 weeks of the year and the first 2 weeks of the next year. Well, 2.5 weeks and 2.5 weeks where we have no UFC. So that's always going to be a thing. And that's 4 of the weeks there. So it's only going to be 5 weeks throughout the year with no UFC on Saturday. And that is something I could live with. That is very fun. I like that. As long as the quality of these cards are good. I'm not trying to see a Jocelyn Edwards versus Ketlin Vieira main event. I'm not trying to see a... Who's a really boring one? I'm not trying to see a Mateus Gamrot versus what's his name? Grant Dawson main event. Oh my god, that'd be terrible for the sport. But this overall is going to be a very, very, very good thing for the UFC. And as Joaquin Buckley said, there is so much opportunity in this sport right now. And I hope this means much better cards in the future and much higher paid fighters. Because the UFC has a quota for every card. For every card they put on, they can't exceed a certain amount of spending on it. As far as production cost, labor cost, and then of course the cost of having these fighters win, lose, draw, plus bonuses that go out at the end of every card. I fully expect this to really boost the quality of the product. But it also might not, because if some of the fighters who are towards the top start getting paid more, a lot of these guys don't like fighting as is. They might just stop fighting a lot altogether. You know, we already see Colby Covington once every year and a half. We already see Leon Edwards once every pregnancy. We already see, who's a super inactive fighter? Brian Ortega once a year. Aljamain Sterling like once every 8 months. Maybe this will incentivize them to start competing more often, but it don't matter much. I hope this ends up being really, really good for everyone involved. And I feel this is going to be an overall positive for the sport. Because granted, the UFC is not the first major MMA promotion to go to streaming services, but I think they will be the most successful at doing it. I'm looking at you, ONE-FC. You dropped the ball with that one, Chatri. But until next time, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you can get notified anytime I post videos. And I am out of here.